Hello and welcome to the Gonzales Mitchell Show. I'm Clay Mitchell. Patrick is out on assignment. Today, my guest is Len Foxwell of Avon Strategies. Len was just in a hearing this afternoon, a joint hearing between the House and the Senate, I believe, talking about and discussing the electricity crisis that's going on in this state. Len, what do you know?
Clay, first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate
Sure.
it. The hearing's still going on across the street, and I think just judging by the number of microphones that are still lit up and the fact that when I left, the Public Service Commission hadn't even testified, I think they're going to be there for a while. But what I have seen thus far, and I qualify that again by saying thus far, it's been a disappointment. I don't think that the assembled legislators are really cutting to the heart of the issue, which is that bad laws that they have passed either directly or through preceding general assemblies are allowing corporations to rack up enormous profits and pass costs on to the ratepayers in a way that we've never seen before. I mean, I'm looking at BG&E customer bills that are in excess of $1,000, $1,200, and these are people who have never ever seen rates anywhere near that. And for people who are on fixed incomes, low to moderate income Marylanders, seniors, working families, people are now having to make that decision between putting food on the table, tucking some money away for their kids' public school, paying for prescription drugs, or writing a check to BG&E. And what we're
Yep.
seeing is that the vast majority of these costs are tied up in what's called distribution fees, which has nothing to do with usage. These are arbitrary costs that are controlled by the utilities, and in the bills that I've actually seen, those distribution fees account for 50, 60, 70% of the overall gas and electric bills that's being dropped into people's mailboxes. So, yes, there's a lot of explanation going on. There's a lot of well-paid lobbyists talking about the fact that we had a cold winter. It kind of reminds me of that Southwest fiasco, and everyone was stranded at the airport a few years ago. And Southwest
Right.
said, "Oh, it's just about the cold weather." And no, it was much more to it than that then. And it's much more to it now. It is what I would prefer to refer to as the socialization of loss and the privatization of profit. Everyone is paying more to accelerate and grow Exelon's profit margins.
And Delmarva Power over here is the predominant utility for electricity, and everyone over here screaming. And you could blame the bad weather, the cold weather, whatever. We've had cold winters before in the last 5 years. Just because there wasn't snow doesn't mean we didn't have large cold snaps, and we did. But the bills have never been this high. My wife and I just got a bill. Never was it so high. And we're just two people. The people that have two, three kids, four kids. I can't imagine that. And you're right; they're having to choose between necessities and paying the electric bill. Now, a lot of this stems back from my reading to Senate Bill One. Can you tell, for those who don't know, what Senate Bill One is and what it has done?
Of course, thanks for bringing it up. So, Senate Bill 1 was the number one priority of the Maryland General Assembly last year, period. When a bill, just this, Clay, but for some of your
Right.
viewers may not be as familiar with legislative process, when a bill gets the number House Bill 1 or Senate Bill 1, that means it goes right to the top of the ladder in terms of importance.
Right.
And this legislation essentially took all the third party, private, retail energy suppliers and wiped them out, made it absolutely impossible for them to compete, made it impossible for them to market their products to customers, made it impossible for them to offer good low rates. All those things that they would need to do to encourage and incentivize a ratepayer to to maybe consider using, Vistra or NRG or some other provider as opposed to Baltimore Gas and Electric. And the bill passed. And so, as a consequence, I'm not going to say that Senate Bill 1 is the cause of all this because the problem is more complex than that. What I will say is that Senate Bill 1 uh, essentially locks the ratepayer in the room and in a relationship with Baltimore Gas and Electric in Baltimore, Pepco in DC, Potomac Edison in Western Maryland, Delmarva Power, over where you are on the Eastern Shore, because there
Right.
now are no other competitors in the market. There is no other choice. And that's what happens with monopolies, whether we're talking about toothpaste, trucks, or electricity and gas. When you wipe out all private competition and you deprive the consumer of the ability and the right to choose, what happens? Prices go up, standard of service goes down, uh, businesses will conduct their transactions in a more aggressive and predatory manner, and there's no way out. And that's what we're dealing with right now with Senate Bill 1.
I've also seen and heard on good information that the electric auctions where they have to purchase electricity going out, that's scheduled to happen, I think in June or July, isn't looking good again either. I don't think the increase is going to be as much as it was last summer during those electric auctions, but it's going to be significant. Uh, I think the importing of electricity from Pennsylvania because we've shut down power plants in an aggressive manner is just not responsible.
I agree.
Uh, I know we have windmills and solar panels and all that trying to come online. I think there's a place for that, but I don't think it is ready for prime time as a proven technology to immediately take over some of the fossil fuel, for lack of a better term, power generation plants. And we're importing 40% of the electricity for Pennsylvania, which have fossil fuel burning plants. I don't understand the logic behind that. If you can enlighten me on that, my friend, I'd love to hear it.
No, Clay, I think you went through it quite effectively. We do import 40% of our electricity from neighboring states, most of it from Pennsylvania. And the reason is, as you said, the state has established as a policy goal a very, very aggressive, actually, the most aggressive policy in the United States of net carbon zero energy consumption, right? And it is a laudable goal, but the the vehicles for achieving that goal, these alternative renewable energy sources, they are in their early phases of viability. They are an
Right.
emerging technology. We will be having an entirely different conversation about solar energy and offshore and hopefully onshore wind in 15 to 20 years when those are more mature energy sources. Right now, they're not. We need, as a transitional source of capacity, the traditional fossil fuel sources. And we basically eliminated about 6,000 megawatts over the last 10 years of local generation and replace that with only about 1,600 megawatts of
Mm.
generation. And so, where does the balance come from? It comes from out of state, which makes us even more vulnerable to the fluctuations in the wholesale energy markets, as we saw last year with the capacity auctions. And
Right.
pointed out, we're still having to import fossil fuels from places like Pennsylvania, but just at a higher rate. So we're paying more. Those costs are being passed on at unprecedented levels to the consumer, and we're not even anywhere closer to achieving our renewable energy goals.
And my understanding is that there's a couple other fossil fuel electric generating plants to shut down, the largest of which I believe is Brandon Shores. When those go offline, hopefully they'll at least keep those online, but they're scheduled to go offline. What happens?
Well, I think you have to look at a number of things. I mean, first of all, we don't even know because we can't get the data from the Public Service Commission or Baltimore Gas and Electric. We don't know even with the Piedmont pipeline, the Piedmont transition line coming through.
Right.
We don't know the extent to which that is going to bring our supply into an equivalent position with demand, if it's going to give us any capacity, any surplus capacity, because we're simply not being provided with even the basic data. Um, Something else, we seem to be going into a protectionist era when it comes to trade, and we import a lot of our energy, as you know, from Canada. So that is another issue that's a variable that's unknown to us.
Right.
Uh, and not to be reductive, but summer is coming, and if electricity, the cost of electricity is going up at this pace, what's going to happen when we are all dealing with the cumulative effects of climate change and keeping our air conditioners on, our central units, one or two heat pumps, depending on the size of your home, morning, noon, and night. So there's nothing. I didn't come out of this hearing with any assurance that the state of Maryland is positioned to roll back some of the bad policy decisions that got us here, and I don't get a sense that things are going to get any better as we transition from the cold months into the warm months. And I think that should make, according to Patrick's poll, the 80% of Marylanders who are concerned with the magnitude of increase in their bills, it should make them even more concerned.
Was just getting ready to do that. The Gonzales poll in the synopsis says, hitting real close to home and further disheartening Marylanders is their monthly electric bill. 76% say their electric bill today, compared to 1 year ago, is much higher. 57% say somewhat higher. I'm sorry, 57% said much higher. 19% said somewhat higher. That's a vast majority. That's a super majority of people who are really disheartened with that, and it's really starting to take an effect. I think it will affect not only people, as you say, having to choose between food and paying their electric bill, but it also affects uh, disposable income that they could spend at restaurants and events out in the state economy. Uh, as as a man on the ground there, observing what's going on in Annapolis, excuse me, is there any appetite for keeping Brandon Shores, and I think it's the Vienna power station, online beyond this year? My guts tells me no, but you got your ear on the ground there in Annapolis. What are you hearing?
I'm not seeing any. And furthermore, I would say that when I came into this legislative session, we were already in the early stages of these stratospheric rate hikes. And you and I had a conversation offline in which I said the legislature is going to seriously have to consider undertaking 3 steps if they want to get this issue under control. Number one, eliminate the STRIDE program. That was a law that was passed in 2013 by the Maryland General Assembly, which allowed the utilities to achieve what they called an accelerated rate of recovery. Accelerate, make faster the process by which they recoup their infrastructure investments in the form of pass-throughs to ratepayers. That's number one. The
Mhm.
two is elimination of multi-year rate setting, because by allowing utilities to come before the Public Service Commission and ask for rate increases for the next 3 years as opposed to 1 year at a time, then the conversation then the rates that are set are based upon prospective future costs of supplying energy to the ratepayers as opposed to previous averages. And so what
Correct.
those collectively do is it incentivizes the utilities to invest extravagantly without any eye or ear toward cost containment or less expensive, more affordable alternatives. Shoot for the moon, as they say, when it comes to infrastructure, knowing that they can, line the pipes and conduits with gold, so to speak, they can pass those costs on to the consumer in the form of these so-called distribution fees. And then the third thing they've got to do, and what you alluded to it earlier, is we've got to get rid of Senate Bill 1. We have to give the consumer the right to choose, or else BG&E and Pepco and these other big legacy utilities, they can continue to impose whatever costs they want upon the consumer with literal impunity because the consumer has nowhere else to go.
What wasn't Senate Bill 1 vetoed by Governor Hogan, overridden by the legislature? Do I
No,
remember that correctly?
no, Senate Bill 1 was passed last year. It was passed in
Okay.
2024, signed into law
Yeah.
by.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, I stand corrected on that.
Clay, you and I,
As we
and
go
Clay,
ahead.
you had these conversations. You wrote on it. I wrote on it. We both said that this will cause rates to go up because that's what happens with monopolies. Again, whether we're talking about cars, trucks, or electricity, if we eliminated the production of every car in the marketplace except for white Toyota minivans and said to everybody, everybody who drives an automobile has to shop with one dealer and buy one make and one model only. Guess what's going to happen to the cost of that make and model? It's going to go
Going
up
up.
because you have no alternative. That's what monopolies do.
I honest to goodness don't know what the solution is. It appears to me that the for lack of a better term, green agenda has taken hold, and they're not going to let go of that. Therefore, any hope of keeping Brandon Shores, and I think is a Vienna power station, or uh, uh, refurbishing some of the older ones that were taken offline to put it back online as a Maryland generated uh, um, source of electricity is just not on the table, not even near the dinner table room. I think that uh, there's some hard times ahead. I don't know what the solution is. If you artificially cap prices, I don't know how that'll work either. I don't think that has a history of working out very well, but um,
So
we shall
it may be a
see.
long-term policy solution. But Clay, you're
Uh,
absolutely right. You said it. I thought you articulated it quite well. This is an economic issue for the state of Maryland because every dollar that we fork over to BG&E for these so-called distribution fees, that's money that could be spent in restaurants and taverns and with local retailers and businesses on Main Street. So in an economy where 70 cents on every dollar is generated by consumer spending, we are literally eating our seed corn with these bad policies. It's a public health and safety issue because we're seeing people who are financially strapped take risks, keep their houses, extremely cold, foregoing medicine because they have to, write that check to BG&E. So it is a public health and safety issue. Maybe thinking erroneously that if they just rely on space heaters as opposed to heating the entire house, and we know what happens with space heaters, they're
right.
prone to catching fire. So it's an economic issue, it is a public health and safety issue, and it is obviously a quality of life issue. Because every dollar that we spend is money that could be invested in people's families and time with their loved ones and so on and so forth.
Are you headed back over to see the hearing?
I am. I am.
Good. Well, keep an ear to the ground for us, Len. If anything new comes up, let me know, and we'll get it on. As I said in an article I wrote a couple weeks ago, Maryland's not green. Maryland's irresponsible. Hopefully, testimony is going to show, and the pressure from the public is going to get onto the legislators to do something about it. Ultimately, repealing Senate Bill 1, but I'm not holding my breath on that, my friend.
I'm not either, but we have to keep at it. And Clay, I think that in that spirit, what you are doing is absolutely irreplaceable just by keeping people informed about the issues and letting them know just what's going on here in Annapolis on this front.
Great. I appreciate that, Len. By the clock on the wall, I think we got to wind the show down, and it's time to say goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick, wherever you are. Thank you so much, Len. Hope to hear from you soon.
You got it. Talk to you soon.